Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video where we're going to run over the Q4 report issued today by NEL. As some of you are aware, we did a two-part series of NEL where we looked into the company, the prospects, the strategy and the future, and one of our conclusions was that NEL was not necessarily cheap from a price perspective. However, it is a very interesting company. They have some interesting products, they have some interesting collaborations with other companies, they have equities in other companies. So overall, we saw a good perspective in NEL from a long-term perspective. However, we said that in the short term, this stock could be a bit overvalued. And as you can see today, the share price went down with 11.41% after the issuance of the Q4 report. We do not believe that the drop is necessarily linked to the quarterly report that was issued, but it is more a general sentiment in the hydrogen sector where a lot of stocks have been slammed over the past few days. And again, this is by no means a surprise, looking at how much the hydrogen stocks have increased over the past 6 months. Again, we have said it many times, we think that a lot of these companies are overvalued. They have gained a lot of percentages in the share price without actually showing any results to it. So we thought it's natural at a certain point there will come a selling period where these ones are going to pull back, and this seems to be happening as we speak. Does that mean that we do think that NEL is a bad pick? Not at all. We still think it's a very interesting company and we think that they have a lot of good things going on for them, and we're going to touch upon them in this video. So if we take a look at the financials for 2020, what we can see is that revenue and operating income has increased, which is obviously very important. What is quite interesting is that NEL is stating that COVID-19 had a negative impact on the revenue because they have not been able to have the customer dialogue that they usually have. Installations and commissioning have been delayed. People have not been able to travel to do the commissioning part. They are depending on specialized workers. In certain cases, they have had to hire external people to do that, which obviously have an impact on the operating expenses. At the same time, raw materials in general has increased significantly, more than 30% from 2019. This is one of the reasons why operating expenses have increased significantly. The other part is that NEL, as we stated in our separate video, is expanding quite a lot, and they have hired more than 37% additional personnel over the year, which obviously means that the salary cost goes up, and that obviously also have a negative impact on the operating expenses. But again, this is more an investment in the future. In addition to that, they have had an asset impairment and amortization on some of the grants that they have received, which has meant that there has been a loss on around 20 million Norwegian crowns. They have also had a positive one on 1.1 million, but again, not really a lot to offset the loss. And at the same time, they've been impacted by 20 million Norwegian crown fine that they have received in connection with an incident they had on one of the hydrogen fuel stations in Norway. So again, a few one-time off expenses that have had a negative impact on the results. Then you take a look and you say, hey, but look at the pre-tax income and the net income that has grown significantly. How can that be? Well, this is overall due to two different reasons. As we mentioned in the separate video on NEL, they have collaboration or ownership stakes in some other hydrogen companies. One of them is Nikola Motor Corporation from the US, and the other one is Everfuel from Denmark. They're basically both partners to NEL. They collaborate on certain things, but they're also customers. They basically buy NEL products. And on Nikola Motor Corporation in the quarter here, they had to do a negative fair value adjustment of the shareholding in Nikola Corporation, where they had to reduce the value with approximately $8 million. This was something that was entered into in 2019, and over the last quarters, they have either adjusted upwards or downwards, depending on the share price of Nikola Motor Corporation. The second one that they had is Everfuel in Denmark, and here in the third quarter of 2020, they bought shares in Everfuel for $200,000. Now they have done a positive fair value adjustment of the shareholding in Everfuel of more than 1.5 billion Norwegian crowns, which translated into US dollars is around 200 million. And then you're saying, how could they get that for $200,000? Well, basically Everfuel has also done equity purchases into NEL. So basically both companies owns part of them through different subsidiaries, etc. So again, it was not just something that they were giving for free. But again, Everfuel is the primary reason why there is such a positive result in NEL. And what is very important to note with this ownership stake in Everfuel is that they are locked up until October 2021, so basically this year, which means that NEL cannot sell before that. So again, when it comes to October, if they wish, they can hand off the shares, they can take the cash, and they can get the influx to their own business and use them for whatever they want to do. So it's going to be quite interesting to see throughout the year or in October what NEL is going to do with the ownership stake in Everfuel. The last point we want to address in this video is related to the backlog, which is also one of the very important and interesting things around NEL. So obviously, if we benchmark with Q4 2019, the backlog has gone up with more than 90%, which is obviously very acceptable. However, from the last quarter in Q3 2020, it only went up with around 5%, which was a little bit surprise to us, given the fact that they have had so many deals entered into during the quarter. But what we found out afterwards is that some of the major deals that they did with Statkraft, with Iberdrola, and with Everfuel is not finished yet, simply because they first recognized the backlog once they have defined a firm purchase order with an agreed price, volume, timing, terms and conditions. So again, these ones are not included in the backlog yet, but they will most likely happen. Obviously, there's always a risk that they get canceled, but we have a great expectation that these are going to form part of the backlog in the coming quarters. Well, so have anything changed with NEL overall? From our perspective, no. The only bad surprise in the Q4 report was that raw materials have increased with 30% over the last year. And that's obviously the problem that some of these hydrogen companies have. It is that for some of the equipment that is being delivered to them that they use in the manufacturing process can only be provided by a few or sometimes only one supplier, which obviously gives them a lot of power over NEL. So again, that was one bad element in the report. Otherwise, everything according to us was as expected. They're ramping up the production, they're ramping up their sales efforts, they're trying to grow the business in the future. So we think that the drop in the share price today is more reflected on the general sentiment towards the hydrogen industry, where it seems like over the last days the stocks have had to come down a bit, which is, again, as we said just before, it's no surprise because some of the stocks have increased unreasonably high without having delivered anything to justify it. We would say that NEL is one of the exceptions that we are seeing, and again, that's why we wouldn't be too concerned in investing into them. We are still standing on the sideline for now because we think it may pull back a bit further, but if it drops a little bit more, we will most likely enter into a position with NEL simply because we think that there's good prospects in the long run. This was all we had for today. Please keep in mind that we are not professional financial advisors and this is only done for entertainment purposes. Besides that, there's not much more to say than stay safe, have a nice day, hasta la vista baby, and obviously don't forget to subscribe, like the video and share with your friends. Bye bye.